We got shot up pretty bad. We crashed. My gunner pulled me out. My vision started to get real blurred. Things were going gray on me. Darkness was coming over me. I realized I was in the process of physically dying. As I was fading away, you hear about this bright light. The brightest thing you can imagine. Anything comparable is like a dark hole compared to this bright light. As I was lying there dying, I got enveloped by this beautiful light. Dr. Raymond Moody, medical doctor, PhD. He wrote the bestseller, Life After Life. This copy here, when it was printed, sold 3 million. The newest edition is up to 13 million copies. He is the father of the near-death experience. He also wrote The Light Beyond, and his most recent book is Proof of Life After Life. Back when he wrote Life After Life, he was a skeptic, a true skeptic, in the sense that somebody investigates it to the end of the ability to investigate something and withholds making judgment on it. So he wrote Proof of Life After Life, 7 reasons to believe there's an afterlife. He's up to 20 million copies sold of all of his books that he's written.
For those who are concerned about the question of an afterlife, I now say that it is rational for somebody to say, on the basis of what we have now, that they are confident that there's an afterlife. What set of concepts do you use to connect the stories to the statement that there's an afterlife? And that has always been unsolved, but I say it's solved now. And so that's why I'm confident. If somebody wants to drill down on this and test me on it, I'm ready. As a professor of logic, I can defend it.
If you go to the University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies, it defines the near-death experience, NDE. It says near-death experiences are intense, vivid, and often life-transforming experiences, many of which occur under extreme physiological conditions such as trauma, ceasing of brain activity, deep general anesthesia, or cardiac arrest, in which no awareness or sensory experience should be possible according to the prevailing views in neuroscience. A couple key words here in this definition. Cardiac arrest means your heart stopped. It quit. Blood stopped pumping throughout your body and your brain went offline due to no blood flow to the brain. So back in 1975, Raymond Moody coined the term near-death experience. It includes mostly the cardiac arrest, so when your heart stops here, this zone. But it also includes the almost died section, somebody that had an event that almost led up to their death. In 2022, 18 doctors got together and discussed the guidelines and standards for the study of the recall death experience, and they redefined the near-death experience from this zone here of the cardiac arrest and beyond, where they can potentially bring your life back. They called it the recall death experience, because some people that have these experiences come back and they bring back objective information that the doctors and nurses can verify. They also have subjective experiences which we cannot verify, going into the light and beyond that. There are testimonies where they can recall all the experiences going on in the surgical room, even in the theater next door. The only issue with this current model is you have a cardiac arrest here, And you go into this gray zone of potentially reversible death where technology is increasing to where you can come back further and further from this zone. Let's say they pump on your heart for an hour in this cardiac arrest zone, and then you permanently cease. You don't come back from it. They declare you dead here. They don't declare you dead way up here where you actually died. You can have an event in this zone right here, a conscious experience. So Dr. Sam Parney, he is a leading researcher in the recall death experiences. He writes in his book, Erasing Death, that when this event affects the brain activity, the brain stops function and the person loses electrical activity in the brain within about 10 seconds, as well as life-maintaining brainstem reflexes. Cardiac arrest is synonymous with death, and without the pump, you cannot deliver oxygen-enriched blood to the brain. Research has also found that there is some residual brain activity after death. People liken this last burst of energy from the brain as like a light bulb going out. So it may seem like I'm trying to sell you on near-death experiences. I'm not. If you're interested, you can check out the science of near-death experiences. What our primary objective is to reduce this number here, 22 veterans a day. Even one is way too many. Your life is precious. In my line of work, we believe in zero harm. Everyone goes home safely at the end of the day. Zero harm is the heart of our being. It's the focus of everything we do. Leaders believe in zero harm by leading by example, the behaviors expected to produce the desired results, which are zero harm. Dr. Raymond Moody, let's hear about what he has to say about suicide prevention and zero harm.
The patients who attempted suicide almost died but were revived and did have a near-death experience. When those are followed over a period of time, there's an essentially zero rate of any further attempts at killing themselves.
What Dr. Raymond Moody and others are doing in this challenging field of study is imperative. If there was a way to get this number down to essentially zero, would you do it? That's the question. Raymond Moody talks in his new book about a young woman who took her own life, 16-year-old, fits of depression. And it describes her out-of-body experience where she was made of light floating on the ceiling. Describes feeling of love and peace, meeting a guardian angel. She realized that her body was a gift. I was supposed to take care of it, not kill it. She says she begged the life for light. The leading up to this unfortunate event was that her boyfriend had been cheating on her. What she learned in this experience is that life will have a series of trials that you are to overcome. Your body is a gift. It's not something you should kill.
Among people who've survived a close brush with death are those who've attempted suicide. Suicide NDEs have a unique and important message to contribute to the field of suicide prevention.
Pim Van Lommel, in his book, Consciousness Beyond Life, he is a cardiac specialist. So he says the near-death experience was during a failed suicide attempt. People usually refrain from making a second attempt because the experience taught them they remained burdened with the problems they were trying to escape. They come to realize that there's a better way to solve problems in this life because the other dimension offers scant opportunities for solving earthly problems. So you've got to deal with your problems in this existence. So whatever dimension our biophotonic light bodies enter into, something Western scientists know nothing about, there you will have a new problem. One that will likely be much more difficult to solve. That's why this is a significant deterrent.
You know, I had worked with a lot of suicidal patients in my career. We did a study of every patient who was admitted to the hospital with a suicide attempt. And we compared those who had a near-death experience as a result of that attempt with those who didn't have an NDE. And those who had a near-death experience became much less suicidal. And what they said was that they now see, because of the NDE, meaning and purpose in their lives that they didn't see before. They no longer saw those problems as something to be run away from, but as challenges to learn from. And they found life much more meaningful and fulfilling.
Dr. Bruce Grayson writes the book After. A doctor explores what near-death experiences reveal about the life and beyond. In his book After, Dr. Grayson discusses how some of those who had experiences in the past, when these were not well known or studied, the patients were often ridiculed and sent for mental health exams. Fortunately, Grayson is a scientist who follows evidence even when it doesn't agree with the worldview we are supposed to be restricted to. It was a recovering suicide patient that led Dr. Grayson on his journey to the near-death experience research. In this book, Dr. Grayson talks about a patient that shot himself. He lost his mom, going through severe depression, started drinking heavily, and who does he meet in the afterlife? His mom. And she gives him the business. Says, "Look what you've done." I'd really like to know the tone of that voice. Said he couldn't go on, but after his experience, he was eager to talk to patients, to assure them about the value and sanctity of life. Your life has so much value. His new mission is to help people now. He says it is so important on how to resolve the suicidal thoughts in this life. He also talks about a nurse, 25-year-old nurse, who thought they would just take a overdose of opioids. And it says, "I thought I would just drift off and that would be the end." And boy, were they wrong. Another patient talks about their experience. "My death experience is more real to me than life. It was absolute reality, vastly more real than anything." The person that attempted suicide at the age of 31 said that this is more real than anything on earth. By comparison, my life, my body had been a dream. Dr. Grayson has reached the same conclusion of other researchers. He says that near-death experiences decrease the thoughts of suicide, and that introducing these findings into the education, into traditional therapies can lead to a dramatic decrease or elimination of suicidal thoughts. The opening skit was a story from Steve, who had a near-death experience as a helicopter pilot getting shot up in the jungles of Vietnam. He learned from his experience that you cannot take the afterlife.
And all of a sudden, God said, "You're not ready." I said, "Yes, I'm ready. You can't be doing what you think you're doing. You're going to try to send me back? I won't go back. You can't show me this and let me feel this love and this no worries of any kind. As I will be alive for infinity, and now send me back in my body and it's shot up and it's hurting in the middle of the jungles. I won't go back, and you put me back in my body, I'll make sure I die." And he said to me, he wasn't angry, but he was stern. He's tough love. And he said, no, you cannot take this. Only I can give this to you. And if you ever try to take it, it will never be yours.
This has been a concern of others who have studied the near-death experience, that if you talk about it and if you talk about the afterlife, it might want to encourage people to initiate action to move into the afterlife. What researchers have determined is that that is not the case. You cannot take the afterlife. But back to the initial question, is the mental health only approach working? No spirituality. I tell you, the mental health only approach is not working. Cutting out its spirituality is failing.
What are we seeing as a result of that? Well, the Centers for Disease Control just this year released a study and said that 60% of young female students in America last year experienced persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. And it's 25% made plans for suicide.
Went and played at the elementary school the other day with the kids. There on the blacktop, somebody in elementary school had written, "I wish I could die." In my kids' middle school, on the wall in the bathroom, suicide prevention poster, call 988. We are giving them a triad of mental health, social health, physical health. We are forgetting about the spiritual component.
And it was a terrible feeling, and I just realized at that moment, I said, like, what have I done? I remember zoning in and out of consciousness, And I remember for a split second before I completely lost consciousness that night, I said, God, I don't want to die.
I'll talk to you about Kevin Hines. He is a survivor of a Golden Gate Bridge jump. He talks about it, and he says, the moment my hands left the rail, I had instant regret for my actions. He says, going down, all I could think about was all I wanted to do was live. So this is a rare testimony. We typically don't get somebody that survives this type of jump.
They just want the pain to stop. What they don't realize is that their thoughts don't have to become their actions. Their thoughts don't have to take over. If at the millisecond that my hands left that rail, instant regret for my actions, and the absolute recognition that I just made the greatest mistake of my life.
So in Kevin's story, his social health failed him, his physical health failed him, his mental health failed him. It wasn't until he was plunging to his death that he called out to God. His spiritual health is what saved him.
On the way down, I said to myself, what have I just done? I don't want to die. God, please save me. And I hit the water. The guy looks at me, he leans in, and he says, kid, do you know how many people we pull out of this water that are already gone? And I said, no, and I don't want to know. And he said, well, I'm going to tell you. This unit has pulled 57 dead bodies out of this water and 1 live one.
If there was a way to get this suicide number down to essentially 0, would you do it?